If you're still in school but you're looking to get in on the AI engineering wave, you might be a little bit anxious about the job market, which favors senior developers. However, I analyzed 1,000 AI engineer roles in the US and found 129 roles for new graduates at notable big tech companies such as TikTok, Duolingo, and Ford. And some of them pay up to $259,000. So in this video, I'll show you exactly what you need to learn to land that first AI engineer job offer straight out of school or still in school, and tell you whether you're good with your bachelor's degree or if you should pursue a master's or a PhD. So first of all, only 13% of the roles end up being for entry level or new graduates. But these 129 roles do show some pretty consistent patterns about what these sort of companies want to hire people with little to no experience and what they're looking for. I also want to stress that employers are struggling in this hiring market as well, because the saturation is quantitative, not qualitative. It's a bunch of people who are lazily applying for jobs that they're not qualified for, or if they're qualified for that job, they're very bad at showing that. So if you put in some more effort and you learn what's actually needed, then you'll be able to get that first AI engineer job role. Okay, so what I did is I took the data and I basically asked an LLM to generate, a summary of the findings. And I'm going to go through the most interesting points with you right now. So like I've talked on this channel before, is the AI engineer role can be divided into three archetypes. The first one is the machine learning role, where you talk about TensorFlow, building and deploying models. And then there's the Gen AI role. This is the one you probably want, where you're working with LLMs, you're building AI workflows or AI agents and deploying them as well, vector databases, etc. And then there's also kind of the general software developer role, where it's like any other software developer role, but it has some LLM sprinkles on top of it, like calling the OpenAI API, and they sometimes label that as an AI engineer role, which could be a good way, honestly, of breaking into the industry, because you don't need as much AI knowledge, but then you still get that sweet AI engineer job title, which will help you getting your later job. But as you'll see, not a lot of them are traditional machine learning jobs, and the majority are this Gen AI role. So what does that mean? Well, you can kind of drop the TensorFlow. Well, don't drop TensorFlow, but stop spending so much time on Kaggle and all that stuff. Focus more on Gen AI, LLMs, understand how they work on the low level, understand transformers. If you can, in an engaging way, deliver an in-depth explanation of how large language models work and their foundation, that's pretty impressive. And I don't think a lot of people can do that. And there will be plenty of chances in any AI engineer interview for you to do so. So I summarized the most essential skills by order of frequency that they appear in the job listings. What you'll find is, of course, you need to know Python. If you don't know Python, you gotta learn Python. Make sure you're comfortable programming in Python. Make sure you know how to optimize Python, memory management, asynchronous programming, that sort of stuff. But you'll notice teamwork is the most frequently asked for skill. Also, communication is quite prominent. So at this level, companies are not expecting you to master TensorFlow or LangChain, because they know that ultimately they're gonna have to train you to do that anyways, and that's fine. But something that's very hard to train, especially in the tech industry, is soft skills, So that's why communication, teamwork is very good to not only have, but to demonstrate that you have. So example for teamwork, make sure to participate in some hackathons and see if you can even win one. That'd be great. Put that on your resume, and that's a pretty good evidence that you can work well in teams, etc. Or get involved in communities or societies in and outside of your college. So I started a couple of weeks ago an AI engineer community. It's local, but it was not very hard at all to grow to 70 members. And now I have access to engineering managers at Spotify and other big tech companies through the group. So what I want to say is, don't underestimate, community building, not only for networking purposes, but also because it shows that you can, communicate and work well with others. And you can also do this online in online communities, like join the discords of LangChain, for example, etc., and just participate there. And basically what you want to do is become very comfortable with showing off and showing what you can do, which surprisingly few amount of people can do so comfortably in an interview. So this could be, you know, doing an open source project, writing a Medium article about it, or hey, even making a YouTube tutorial about it. Like, even if these things don't get any views, just you explaining what you're doing, you know, the challenges you face, etc. It's very useful to have that skill, and just doing it once or twice, like for a Medium article or a video, will really help you in an interview explain your projects more concisely and impress. And then, hey, who knows, that YouTube tutorial you made might even kind of pop off, and a lot of people might actually enjoy it. Who knows? Also, another thing is like, yeah, you have PyTorch here and TensorFlow, but given the prominence of GenAI roles here, which a lot of them use LangChain and LangGraph usually, you don't really see them here, right? But you do see, you know, these like boring skills like SQL and AWS. Yeah, don't discount these like old school kind of boring skills to have in favor for the new shiny frameworks like LangChain, etc. Make sure you have your fundamentals down at least first. Also, I see computer vision here was, you know, at 20% of the entry-level jobs. So that's quite interesting, and I think a great way for you to niche yourself, to make yourself more competitive in this hiring industry. If you know computer vision well, you've done a couple of projects about it, if you like nerded down on that, that could be a good way of getting your first job, because not everyone is going to do that. So very useful. Okay, so the top companies hiring fresh graduates. I want to talk specifically about TikTok here, because they're hiring quite aggressively for new grads, which makes sense. They're, I think, the fastest growing social media, and they're also like focusing heavily on their e-commerce initiative. If you're working both in social media and e-commerce, those are two very large and fast growing industries. So like, very good to get in there. So you see they have graduate positions, and it seems like a lot of NLP focus, and a lot of them are recommendation and search. So perhaps do some projects about recommendation systems. And when it comes to search, you know, making a RAG application where you're kind of vectorizing data and having a way to respond to user queries. You know, your classic chatbot application, like the one I did, that got me my first AI engineer job offer. That's very important here. I mean, look, one of these pays up to $259,000, which is ridiculous. I think this was in like San Francisco or something, but like to come fresh out of school and make that amount of money is crazy, you know? So if that doesn't tell you enough that you should make this career shift your priority, I don't know what to tell you. If this is valuable so far, please give me a like. I'm a self-taught senior AI engineer. I didn't have the luxury to go to school like you, at least not for CS. I was a real estate agent before I started learning how to program. But in this channel, I help people make the transition into becoming an AI engineer and to grow themselves in their AI engineer careers. And by liking this video, you'll help me make better content for that endeavor. So yeah, thanks. So apart from that, we have Ford, which have a machine learning engineer position, you know, fresh grad as well. And what's interesting with Ford is that they're in automobile and probably logistics, right, as well. So if you can show any sort of like interest or experience in that industry, you know, automobile, like, hey, you might even have worked like as, you know, a car salesman before or something like that. Like, all these little things, they help, because if you have two developers, right, especially for a new grad position that you're hiring for, one of them is very good at coding, the other one is decent at coding, but knows about the car industry, you know? Like, which one are you gonna pick? You're gonna have to train both of them anyways. So like, pick the one who knows how to drive stick shift, you know? That's another thing this report shows, is there's a lot of different industries hiring in Gen AI. Like, if you just want to get into the general software development companies like Meta, Google, etc., those are very competitive. But like here, if it's in a certain industry, like we also have Lockheed Martin here, which they do defense and also space manufacturing. This is an industry that you can, you know, game, like you can learn the industry, you can read up on the news about it, about what's happening, and then showing those skills in the interview and showing that you're actually excited about the things they're doing. It's such an underrated like hack, I guess, to get jobs. I don't think a lot of people do this, because a lot of people get into this industry because they love coding or making money or whatever, and like, yeah, that's fine. But if you can have a little bit more depth than that, you'll find it pays off very well. Also, someone who loves to learn languages, I have to mention Duolingo here, and they have like a data scientist new graduate position. Yeah, it's not an AI engineer role, but the data scientist role is very foundational to the AI engineer role. So I think there's still a great opportunity. And I've spoken to the hiring managers at Duolingo before, and they really try to hire new grads. You know, they kind of focus on people fresh out of school just because that's like their culture. So definitely a cool company to target. And also Autodesk has a internship, so it's a bit less paid because it's an internship. Also a very cool company to work for. They do a lot of different software products. And what you notice in this list, there's a lot of intern positions, and yeah, they pay a bit less, but these are catered towards people who have little to no experience. So like this is a great way to get into the industry. And if you get an internship at one of these companies like, you know, Duolingo or Autodesk, if you do a good job, then like you'll probably get a return offer. And then you're already in that company. You don't have to go through all this mess of looking for another job after your internship is done. So I wouldn't discount the intern route. Like, yeah, it's a bit long term, well, like a year maybe, until you make actual money, but it's quite underrated. Like, honestly, even if they're unpaid, the experience you're getting is still valuable. And if you play your cards right, you'll extract as much value as you want from the internship. But yeah, in general, salaries are, you know, kind of around the 70 to 120K range. I think it's quite standard for software development salaries in the US. I think the real bump you get from being an AI engineer becomes when you have a bit more experience. But remember, you also have like additional job security as an AI engineer because there's this fear that AI is going to take our jobs. Well, okay, then work on AI, man. But there are some very interesting outliers, like the one from TikTok is paying absurd higher ranges, like over 200K. It's ridiculous. You can still make pretty good money like as a fresh grad, which is insane. Also, I didn't put this in the report, but in general, most of these companies, they're fine with a bachelor's degree and just relevant knowledge of frameworks and technologies. But there are some that require a master's or a PhD. And look, I'm sure these can never hurt. So if you have the means to get a master's, I'd certainly go for it. It's like an extra year. While it's not absolutely not necessary, it does make quite a difference. The PhD I don't recommend because it takes way too long. It's like super hard. Unless you really want to, you can take that time to just focus on getting better. And I hear a lot of complaints in the hiring industry, like there's a lot of PhD graduates in ML and AI, and they know their stuff very well because they've read a lot of articles and blah, 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 but they can't code to save their lives. You need to be in the real world a lot, you know, and I feel like studying for a PhD, it kind of limits you from that. It's a lot of like academia and research focused. Okay, and on the topic of remote work, look, I know you want to get a remote job, you know, earn a bunch of money in dollars, and then, I don't know, travel in Brazil, you know, on some tropical island paradise, paying like $300 for rent. Look, been there, done that. But at this stage of your career, I mean, most of these jobs are going to require a hybrid or on site. So at this stage of your career, just go for it, like build yourself up. Might be the boomer inside me talking, but like early in your career, you should be on site. You should, you know, meet other people and build your network. And also I would say it's much easier to pair program and debug when you're actually together. So like just focus on building yourself up for the next 1 or 2 years and the remote stuff will come. You're young probably. You're not like me. So you have a bunch of time ahead of you to do all that remote work, fun stuff, right? I'm actually not that. I'm actually not that old. I use Linux and this happened. So yeah, that's my brief little analysis of these jobs. And look, I'm thinking about doing a newsletter where I can put out these jobs as I find them to help you guys out. So if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link in the description. It'll be completely free. Just trying to help out, really. And on a final note, I want to say, look, the market is competitive, but the opportunities are there if you look for them and you get to know what these companies want, then you can get these opportunities. I hope that made sense. Okay, great. So you've done all this and then you reached out to a couple companies and now you have an interview on the way and you're freaking out. How do I even prepare for one of these? How is it LeetCode or like what? Well, don't worry, I got you in this video right here. So check it out and yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.